This is In Focus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, welcome to this special holiday edition of Record in Focus.
That's right, Kent. This is the show where it looks like we're all dressed up and hard at work, but actually this time of year we're pretty relaxed. Pre-recorded weeks in advance.
Oh, well, thanks for destroying the magic of television for us, Danielle. But I am genuinely excited about today's episode because it's featuring an interview we've never shown on In Focus before. A little while back, Danielle, I had the privilege of meeting Rabbi Shmuley, who I think is probably the first rabbi we've ever had in the studio.
Yeah, I reckon you'd probably be about right with that, Kent. He talked so much, actually, that we couldn't fit him into a normal episode.
Oh, that is true, actually. But we often have that problem.
We do.
Usually we just cut a few questions out of the interview and play a shorter version, but we couldn't bring ourselves to do that with Rabbi Shmuley. He just had so many interesting things to say, and I've got to warn you, strap yourselves in, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Strap yourselves in. But actually, Kent, before we do that, we should remind you that Record in Focus is rated PG, and so we just want to give you a bit of warning that there were some fairly adult remarks made during this interview.
True. Fair enough. Roll tape. Well, they call him the Rabbi to America, and Rabbi Shmuley is being the Rabbi to Australia here today. How are you, Rabbi Shmuley?
I'm married to an Australian. I love Australia, so if I could add that to any list. No, look, I'm a rabbi, and all of us try to create the community we can by imparting messages of universal application that are godly, that are spiritual. And rabbis do that, and Seventh-day Adventists do that. And what we all share in common is this belief that living by God's laws and living according to a divine plan is itself the source of blessing.
Now, I first came across you, Rabbi Shmuley, listening to Australian radio several years ago, and my ears sort of perked up when I heard you use the phrase kosher sex. Well, what did you mean by that?
Well, sexuality is supposed to be transformative. It's supposed to be emotion that brings forth emotions. I know that people look for great sex today, which is kind of screaming the name of the deity during the act. I'm looking for kosher sex where people remember each other's names the morning after the act. What happened to sex as an act of intimacy? Genesis 2:24, therefore shall a man leave his father and leave his mother. He shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And religion, to an extent, has confused the issue, because some religious teachings are that sex is for procreation. Interestingly, that has more in common with evolutionary biology than it does with the Bible. The Bible is clear that the purpose of sex, that act of cleaving, is to become one flesh, to be orchestrated from being two parts into one indivisible part, bone of one bone, flesh of one flesh. It's a beautiful romantic connotations. It's not about having children. That's, of course, very important. I'm a father of 9 kids, thank God.
Wow.
But a husband and wife having an active, intimate life, which is based on exclusivity, primacy, erotic passion, desire, even lust and covetousness. I know that for Christians, covetousness can be seen as one of the 7 deadly sins. For us Jews, lusting after your wife. Yeah. Well, on the contrary, the 10th commandment is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Which means by direct implication, you sure as heck ought to be coveting your own wife, or it simply would have said thou shalt not covet any woman.
Okay, wow. Oh, that's incredible. So how do Americans take this, looking at these teachings that are thousands of years old and saying, hey, these, biblical messages apply to relationships and family today? How are they taking that?
Look, Kosher Sex, thank God, was an international bestseller, not just in the United States, but a lot of people ask me, kosher sex, is it just for Jews? And I said, even for the uncircumcised, kosher sex is a cut above. Yeah. That was supposed to be a funny line.
Okay.
No, I'm just kind of joking. It's kind of that strange American humor.
No, it's good.
I think that the advocacy of family and marriage is something that Western audiences, secular Western audiences, really want to hear. People want to be married. All the polls in the United States show that even college students, not necessarily known for marital commitment, 80% want to marry and be happy. So why is marriage on the decline? Why are divorce rates soaring? Because marriage is kind of boring. We live in an age that's addicted to the adrenaline rush. We want life to be exciting. Television provides constant excitement, or at least tries to. People want to travel. They want a sense of adventure. Now, if you take a marriage and you make it into a destination, if you make it into a place you've both arrived at, and now there's just more of a grind and monotony of the everyday and the routine, then it's going to be less appealing. But if you make marriage into a journey of exploratory discovery, it's going to be deeply interesting. So I think sexuality is something that provides endless opportunities for erotic discovery. I think that love provides for the same. I don't think we are married to the same person every day. I think people evolve. I think people change. I think people grow. And the problem in our culture and society is that renewal for most of us comes about only horizontally. So renewal means I buy new clothes, I travel to a new place, I get a new job, I do new things. Real renewal is vertical. It's I become a deeper person. I become more insightful. I engage in more enriching, deeper experiences. And I learn to have the honesty and the candor to share the authenticity of those experiences with a person that I love. And that's what I think leads to real romantic and erotic passion in a marriage.
And what's the key, do you think, to this, vertical renewal, as you put it?
The key to vertical renewal is to be a deeper person. It's to develop that all-important third dimension. We can't just lead two-dimensional lives. So while it's very important to go to a gym and be healthy and to look great, that's all topical. That's all surface level. It's equally important to read and form an opinion and to be introspective and meditative and contemplative and to think deeply and to share of yourself with the other. Modern society kind of pulls us out of ourselves. It doesn't foster deep introspection. Everything about TV and about radio and about the internet is about pulling us into alternate realities. Sometimes we have to shut all that stuff out and actually focus on the inner reality. One of the things that Seventh-day Adventists and Jews, of course, have in common is this respect for the seventh day, the respect of the Sabbath. For us, the Sabbath is the fulcrum of the week. It's the pivotal moment of our weekly existence. It's a time when we turn off the television cameras and we turn off all the electronic interference. We don't answer calls. We don't respond to emails. We don't do social media. We take all of the creative energy that is normally exerted on the outside world and we invert it and we focus it on the inside world. And we become deeper people as a result. Look at how, unfortunately, the Sabbath has been bastardized in Western civilization, where it's a day for shopping, it's a day for going for movies. What about family time? What about community time? What about marriage time?
Wow. There's certainly a lot to think about there. Now, on our way here and earlier, while in your visit in Australia, you've heard some comments from retired Foreign Minister Bob Carr about the state of Israel, and it's not just family values and marriage that you're passionate about. It is also the state of Israel. Can you just briefly outline your concerns there?
Well, one of the reasons that I was eager to be on your show and I was grateful for the invitation is that I did want to speak to a Christian audience here in Australia. The fact is that the Judeo-Christian heritage is something essential to civilization, to world civilization. So much of our joint heritage is Judeo-Christian in its values, in our belief in freedom and openness, freedom of religious expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press. These are all Western democratic traditions that are largely based on the idea that if we're going to be religious, let it be non-coercive. Let's compel people through our ideas. Let us compel them through our inspiration, through our convictions, rather than through a rifle butt. Well, that's not necessarily embraced in places in the Middle East, where you see a lot of women being whipped in the streets for how they dress. You see women being subjected to honor killings for falling in love with the wrong person. And you see even gay men, whatever people think about homosexuality, surely we all are abhorred by the abomination of gay men being hung from cranes in the streets of Tehran. Now, we who are part of that Judeo-Christian heritage in the West have to stand up for Israel, which is the sole bastion of democracy and those Western values. And Christians especially, this is the land where Jesus walked. This is the land where Jesus taught. If you can stand up for the Jewish people who were Jesus' people in their effort to simply live in a tiny little sliver of land, which would take an infinitesimal corner somewhere in Australia. Israel's that small. If you can stand up for Israel against this annihilatory effort to eradicate that Jewish presence, then you're missing a commitment to those Western democratic values.
I think the difficulty for Christians, Rabbi Shmuley, is that Jesus himself said, my kingdom is not a kingdom of this world. He pointed to something greater, and surely the greatest hope of the Jewish people is not a physical parcel of land, but the hope in the Messiah.
If you're correct that Jesus never wanted a dominion here on earth, then why is there going to be a second coming? Why doesn't Jesus just stay in heaven? Of course Jesus wanted a kingdom on earth. That's what Christians pray for every single day, the transformation of the earth, not just of heaven.
Thy kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven.
If you remove the idea of the second coming from Christianity, you have stripped Christianity of one of its most important central tenets. Christianity believes that religion should spread. Christianity believes that there should be a world of justice and a world of compassion. Christianity believes that organizations like ISIS that chop people's heads off, that abuse and misuse religion for the abominable practice of ritualistic murder must be fought. On the contrary, I wrote a book called Kosher Jesus that demonstrates clearly from the pages of the New Testament, from Mark and Matthew and Luke and John and all the epistles of St. Paul, that Jesus fought the tyranny of Caesar, that Jesus claimed that the oppression of Rome was something that was ungodly. He was put to death by the Roman Caesar. He was put to death by the Romans. It was Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman governor of ancient Judea, who banged him up on a cross because of his opposition to Roman rule. Not to understand that the brutality of Rome was something that Jesus opposed, let alone all the apostles who were murdered by Rome. If Christians can't understand tyranny, if Christians who were fed to lions in the Colosseum can't understand about the need to oppose the brutality of those who slaughter innocents, then they've missed one of the central Christian messages. And Israel alone is standing up to that brutality in the world's most dangerous region, and it needs Christian support.
Well, what can Christians do to support Israel, do you think?
Well, when someone like Bob Carr comes and engages in the crudest form of anti-Semitism, this was a premier of this state, New South Wales. This was a foreign minister of Australia. When he comes and says that Jews in Melbourne control all of the foreign policy of Australia, that's, harking back to these protocols of the elders of Zion. The Jews control the banks, the Jews control the media, the Jews now control Australia. The average decent Australian who's watching this program, does he really believe that Australia's greatest threat is a couple of Jews in Melbourne? Really? You mean it's not Islamic extremism? I love the Islamic faith. Muslims are my brothers, but I don't love Islamic militant extremists who want to murder in the name of God. They violate the beauty of Islam. They are an abomination to Islam. They should be condemned by righteous Muslims. Does the average Australian think that we Jews are the real threat to Australia, like Bob Carr says? Does the average Australian think that people like me are the great threat? When you see someone like me walking across the street with a yarmulke and a beard, I'm like an American, about 5'5", hairy. Do you suddenly begin to panic and think, what's this nefarious Jewish guy going to do? When Bob Carr says things like that, it ought to be condemned by mainstream Australia. His crude anti-Semitism, there should be a public outrage. The Jews of Australia are patriotic. How dare he say that? Australia is a phenomenal ally of the State of Israel. It understands that Israel is fighting just for its very existence, that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, that the 1.5 million Arab Israeli citizens enjoy more freedoms in Israel than they do in any Muslim country on earth. Australians get that. That's why this righteous country, Australia, took in so many Jews who fled Hitler's ovens after the Second World War and the Holocaust. My wife is from Sydney, Australia. Her mother is the daughter of Holocaust survivors. My wife's grandparents, who died here in Sydney, Australia, and who are buried in Sydney, were refugees from Hitler's death camps. And Australia took them in. This is an incredible, good country. The likes of Bob Carr or any other person who peddles crude anti-Semitism should be condemned by mainstream Australians. In the same way that Australia has made phenomenal progress in acknowledging bravely and courageously some of its racist past towards Aboriginals. And I just came from Darwin, where you see the efforts being made by the government to redress some of the previous wrongs. And that's a courageous decision. The same is true of the Bob Carrs of this world. We have to reject racists like him, anti-Semites like him. You don't like Israel? You want to criticize Israel? Fair enough. But you want to start engaging in these old canards of Jewish world conspiracy, of Jews trying to take over the world. Do you know how much, the price we Jews have paid for that kind of anti-Semitic canard? You know how many Jews have been slaughtered and killed and gassed for that kind of canard? The kind of things that Nazis engaged in, saying that Jews are trying to take over Germany, that Jews are basically bloodsuckers. And now, I'm not saying that Carr went that far. He didn't go that far, but he's dabbling in that area, and
he tapped into that vein,
Eyes for India is giving sight to the blind, and you could be part of this amazing humanitarian project. There are 52 million blind people in the world, and 15 million of those live in India. There are more blind people in India than any other country in the world. Many could see again if only they could have cataract surgery. It Is Written Oceania is making this happen. Our project, Eyes for India, has a mobile clinic equipped with professional staff that brings this life-changing service to thousands of people each year who otherwise may not have the opportunity to have their sight restored. You may be their only hope. For just $75, you will be giving the gift of sight to people who desperately want to see. All you need to do is call 1300-567-297. That is 1300-567-297. Or visit our website www.itiswrittenoceania.tv to donate and support Eyes for India. You can also write to It Is Written Oceania, PO Box 1115, Warunga, New South Wales 2076, Australia.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Wow. Okay. So as Christians, I mean, obviously some Christians see the Israel-Palestine issue differently. Some Jews see the Israel-Palestine issue differently. How do we engage with the issue without falling into the trap, as you said, of anti-Semitism, of tapping these deep veins of hatred that are there?
I would ask every Christian to follow the Bible. The Bible says that through the Jewish people, people are blessed because the Jewish people were given a mandate to be a light unto the nations. Christianity, St. Paul is clear that Christians believe that they are grafted on the seed of Abraham, and the Jewish people are the direct descendants of Abraham. And the Jewish-Christian alliance, which is so strong today, is critical. For those who have problems with the state of Israel, just be knowledgeable of the facts. Is Israel a perfect country? Of course not. But do you want a country that respects the rights of women? Do you want a country that respects Christians and keeps them alive? Do you know that there's a war on Christians in the Middle East? They're being slaughtered and exterminated today, and people are doing almost nothing about it. The Yazidis, who were nearly slaughtered, if not for American and Western intervention, by ISIS. Christian communities are being decimated in the Middle East. Speak out for them. Forget even the Jewish state. Speak out for your fellow Christians. But to remain complacent and silent while people are dying, for goodness sake, if your religious convictions as a Christian do not inspire you and motivate you, at the very least, to speak out for the innocent, for the downtrodden, then you're utterly betraying the legacy of Jesus. If Jesus did not stand for standing up for the downtrodden, the vulnerable, the weak, the naked, the hungry, then he stood for nothing. That's right. And to have to hear this from a rabbi when Christians should know this of their own accord. Christians know this. It's the essence of Christianity. Stand up for those who are defenseless. So look at the Middle East. You have 6 million Jews, open democratic society, who have tried for more than 6 decades to come to some peace accord, but with organizations like Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran with their daily threats of exterminating the Jews, Hamas with its genocidal charter against the Jews. Do all the people watching understand that 70 years ago, in the lifetime of your grandparents, Jews were taken, put on cattle cars, herded into ghettos where they died of typhus, starvation, malnutrition. Then they were taken to gas chambers where they were gassed to death. Do we not believe, you were in Auschwitz, you told me just before the show started, do you not believe that we have a right to defend ourselves? Just self-defense, just basically defend ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely, Rabbi. But as you say, Christians should be there for the downtrodden and the oppressed. And when they look at situations, like the recent, Gaza situation, or they see this situation of, Palestinians in the West Bank, it's them that often look like the oppressed ones.
It's interesting you say that, because the essence of knowing facts is not just to look at looks, it's to actually have the knowledge behind. So let's say you looked at a picture of Berlin in 1945. What would it look like? Who would it look like the aggressor? Would it be the Nazis who look like the aggressor, or would it look like the Allies have just completely leveled a city. Let's say you looked at Tokyo in 1945. Who would you think was the aggressor?
Bombing of Dresden.
Let's say you looked at the Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Now, Winston Churchill eliminated all of Dresden, Hamburg, 800 bombers destroying whole cities. Is he considered a murderer today? No, he's considered the greatest statesman of the 20th century. Israel never even got close to doing anything like that. Israel is fighting Hamas in the West, in Gaza, where there's no Israeli soldiers, no Israeli settlements, no Israeli occupation. There's not a single Israeli citizen there. There's no Israeli presence. Hamas doesn't care about the Palestinians. If they cared about the Palestinians, they would not have abused the largest per capita international aid ever given to an organization, not to build schools and to build universities and to feed the Palestinian people, but to buy bombs, to buy rockets, to kill Israelis.
Yeah.
They don't live for the welfare of the Palestinian people. They live for dead Jews. They are animated by hatred. Their charter, you know, we in the United States have a constitution. Does our constitution call for the annihilation of another country? It calls for, as the Declaration of Independence says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's about what can we do for American citizens. Hamas's charter says we're going to annihilate the Jews, kill them wherever they're found, and we're going to destroy the state of Israel.
Yeah.
How is Israel supposed to deal with that?
Which is different from the Palestinian people, though, of course. I mean, I guess my question was about the Palestinian people, not Hamas as an organization.
Well, Hamas was democratically elected.
They were.
The Palestinian people need to repudiate Hamas. They need to repudiate so much of the incitement and hatred against Jews. So, for example, what led to this war in the summer that you're speaking about
the Gaza bombardment,
was that 3 Israeli teenagers who were hitchhiking home were picked up by members of Hamas who brutally slaughtered them and left their teenage bodies to rot in the baking Middle Eastern heat.
Horrific crime, yeah.
And when 3 days later, and this rarely happens, thank God, but we have our extremists too, when some small group of Israeli vigilantes killed a Palestinian child in retaliation, do you know how we reacted? I want to say it to the camera right now, as a rabbi. Any Jew who kills in the name of Judaism, in the name of God, is an abomination to Judaism. They are a disgrace to our religion. They are a disgrace to the state of Israel. Now, if you had a simple statement like that from imams and from leaders of Hamas, that if you kill Israeli teenagers in the name of Islam, in the name of this Hamas organization, you're an abomination, it would stop happening. You don't hear those condemnations.
They've certainly condemned
ISIS. You hear the
ISIS.
opposite. You see, they ululate. They're
celebrate.
encouraging people to be suicide bombers. Let me state again, any Jew who kills in the name of God, the name of Judaism, the name of Israel, is an abomination to all Jewish values, to Jewish faith.
Does that include the Israeli army?
Are you saying an Israeli army who simply engages in the defense of its citizens from Hamas, who wants to fire rockets to destroy children, blow up nurseries, blow up buses? Do you really think that we Jews should walk into gas chambers again?
You made a very broad statement, and I'm just wondering. Surely it has limits. Surely it has limits.
But let me ask you: should we walk into gas chambers again?
Well, of course not.
Then what should we do?
Yeah. Well, that's that.
Hamas fires rockets. What should we do?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question.
No, but you surely have an answer. If Hamas is firing rockets at us, and they have a charter saying we're going to exterminate every last Jew, we're going to kill every last Jew, they send suicide bombers to blow up buses. What should we do?
Yeah. Well, the Iron Dome was certainly.
But you won't answer the question. Just what should we do?
Yeah. Well, defense is the.
Well, what is defense?
It's called. You have to go in there and find Hamas.
It's called an army.
And get rid of them. Yeah,
it's called an army. So now let's answer your question.
Yep.
Is the Israeli army allowed to defend the Israeli people? Not only are they allowed to, they are obligated to. Does Australia have a military?
Yeah. Look, I certainly think they have the right to defend us. I'm just was questioning how far your statement went, because it was pretty sweeping.
Well, my statement is that Israel must employ defensive tactics to defend its population from the annihilatory genocidal intentions of Hamas, while always preserving the integrity of civilians, the safety of civilians, to every human extent possible.
Yeah.
But Israel, on
both sides, you mean civilians.
But Israel, in the final analysis, is not God.
Yeah.
It is impossible, even with the best military technology, to safeguard the welfare of every Palestinian civilian when Hamas is firing rockets from schools, when Hamas is allowed to use UN schools for weapon depots.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
And the UN allows this. The UN that passes another resolution condemning Israel almost every Monday and Thursday. It's what almost the UN kind of excels at, condemning the Jewish state, allowing people like Ahmadinejad to speak from its rostrum while they call for the annihilation of the Jews, deny the Holocaust, etc. what is Israel supposed to do? Shouldn't what really happen is that my Arab brothers and sisters should come out and say, listen, Hamas, you don't like Israel, we get it. You cannot pull children into this battle. You cannot fire from schools.
And
you cannot
civilians
fire from neighborhoods. That's exactly right.
Yeah, sure.
It's a war crime. It's a war crime to use children as bulletproof vests.
Yeah.
So Israel has a right to defend itself. Let me also state clearly, every Palestinian child and every Arab life is the equal of a Jewish life. And I believe that Islam is an absolutely beautiful way to approach God. So we Jews, God forbid, not only are we not racist or engaged in the kind of apartheid that's used as Jewish character assassination, we're the ones who taught the whole world in the first chapter of Genesis that every human being is created equally in the image of God.
In the image of God, wow.
And Israel tries to live by that. But we can't just die. We can't just continue to be slaughtered. We have a right. Our lives are no better than anyone, but they're no worse than anyone else either. We have a right to self-defense. That's what Australia does also. It has I was just in Darwin. Darwin was bombed in the Second World War. Most Australians, thank God, are not used to invasions and military incursions, and that's a wonderful thing. Australia enjoys its isolation, but it was bombed in the Second World War. And you know how Australia and the West responded? They bombed Japanese cities indiscriminately. Israel has never done any such thing, has never gotten close to that. So these condemnations are very unfair.
Boy, a lot of issues there, and we could probably go on, but our time is up. Thank you so much for your time today, Rabbi Shmuley. We'll be back straight after the break.
Discover some of these artists from Salter Music. Anna Weatherup.
Oh, people get ready for the train to Jordan.
Castles in Air.
Like watchmen wait for the morning light.
Eric and Monique.
You alone are my strength, my refuge.
Sapphire.
His love reached the bottom of the ocean.
No matter what shade of musical taste you have, you might just find something that sings to you. It's all waiting to be discovered at saltermusic.com. Fresh and exciting original Christian music from Salter Music.
So you think you've got your future all planned out, right? Or maybe you're not sure yet what you want to do, who you want to be, but whatever path you choose to study, a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job, it helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hello. Well, that's it for this week's special holiday episode of In Focus.
It is, Kent, but of course there are more to come over the holiday season, so stay tuned. Or if you'd like to watch an interview again, go to our website, record.net.au.
It's all there. And of course, we love to have your feedback. So send us an email sometime to letters@infocus.org.au. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Keep the conversation going.
That's right, but keep it nice. Thanks for watching.
God bless.
Thank you.